We are in part 5, the final week of our First Peter series, where we've been reading through the book of First Peter, and we've been really trying to wrestle with one question together, and the question is this, is how do we respond to and navigate pain? How do we respond to and navigate pain? We reference that Peter is writing to a group of believers who are being persecuted for their faith, and he writes them this letter to encourage them to stay with the faith in spite of the persecution that's coming their way. And so what we've been looking at is each chapter of this letter and taking away an idea from Peter of how we now in 2025 should respond to and navigate the seasons of pain that we will face as well. So what we've learned so far is this, is that it starts with identity. 1 Peter 1, Peter tells us who we are. And we said this, that when you know who you are, you'll know how to live, right? That understanding your identity in Christ will shape the way that you deal with the pain and the challenges of this life. And so Peter says that we're chosen and that we're children, that we're foreigners and that we're born again, and that identity will impact the way that we live in times of trouble. In the second week of the series, we talked about community, and we talked about this reality that when you say yes to Jesus, you say yes to something bigger than you, that you are part of a community and that you represent that community in the way that you live, the way that you act, and that we rely on each other in that community in order to make it through the difficulty of this life. The third week of the series, we talked about integrity, and we said no matter what comes your way, we choose to behave in accordance with our belief. That trial is not a reason to lose our integrity, and so we live like children of God, like followers of Jesus, regardless of what we face. And then last week, Pastor Tim brought a phenomenal word on resiliency, and he talked about this idea of staying in it in the fire, that the fire may not be there to destroy you, but actually to refine you. And so when we go through the difficult challenges of this life, we stick in it. And so today we're going to be looking at the 5th chapter and our 5th and final word. And the word we're going to be talking about this morning is this word right here, accountability. We're going to be talking about accountability. Now, I don't know what word comes to mind for you when you hear the word accountability. Actually, let's do this. Why don't you turn to the person next to you and tell them, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear that word? It's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word accountability. Turn to the person next to you and answer that real quick. Real quick. Even if you don't know them, you can talk to them. What's the first thing that comes to mind? First thing. Okay, good. All right, now I'm going to tell you what comes to mind when I think of the word accountability, and I just want you to raise your hand if you think of the same thing that I think of, okay? When I think of accountability, the first thing that comes to mind are what I think are the 2 worst words in the entire English language. These 2 words right here. I'm fine. Anyone else think about that? No? I'm the only one? Okay, I love it. I'm fine. Anyone in the room been married for less than 5 years? Just curious. Or like you're engaged, seriously dating right now. Keep your hands up just so I know who you are. Okay. If you have your hand up right now, look me in the face, okay? I'm going to give you some life skills right now, okay? Husbands, look at me. I'm fine does not mean I'm fine. She's lying to you. She's not okay. I'm fine actually means something else. And the longer that you're married, you're actually, there's this thing that gets downloaded into you. It's called the husband translation, and it helps you to understand what she means. This is what I'm fine really means. You royally screwed up, and the only way you're getting out of this is to figure out where you messed up and take accountability without me having to tell you to. That's what I'm fine means. I'm fine means I'm not fine, and you better figure out why. See, what's interesting about the phrase I'm fine is this, is that underneath every I'm fine is actually a set of unmet expectations. There's something that I was expecting. There was a way I was hoping you'd show up. There was something I was hoping you would do. There was something I was expecting from you, and you did not come through on that expectation, and now there's tension, there's frustration, there's hurt. And what I've just seen to be true is that the longer that we live with an unmet expectation, the more unhealthy the relationship gets. That unmet expectations create these unhealthy patterns, these unhealthy relationships, these unhealthy environments. And so if we don't get down to the bottom of what the expectations are, then health is really not an option. Health and expectations are uniquely connected to one another. And this isn't just true in our marriages or our dating relationships or an engagement. This is true really everywhere in life, right? Like if you go to a restaurant and it doesn't live up to expectations and there's no accountability, you stop going to that restaurant. And if you have an employee who doesn't live up to their expectations and there's no accountability for not living up to the expectation, you eventually have to let that person go, right? That if you work for a company and they don't live up to expectation and there's no accountability for when they fall short, when they miss the mark, you eventually start looking for another job. And when you're part of a church that doesn't live up to expectation, well, the stakes are actually higher, aren't they? Because it's not just that you go find another church. No, because when the church doesn't live up to its expectations, people get taken advantage of. When the church doesn't live up to its expectations, people start to question God. When the church doesn't live up to expectations, people begin to lose faith. And here's the problem. When the church doesn't live up to expectation, what happens is that people get hurt. Anyone else notice that in the last 5 years, the phrase church hurt has become pretty common language? Anyone heard someone use that phrase before? Yeah. Why does this happen? Well, the reality is that there's a set of expectations that somewhere along the way wasn't met. And if we can't identify what those expectations are and have clarity on who is supposed to meet what, then hurt ends up being a part of the story. Now, I just want to say this before I go any further. There are people in the room who you have experienced legitimate church hurt. That you had a leader who took advantage, you had a leader who didn't show up and live the way that the scriptures call them to live. You were part of a church that used and abused people. You've maybe been in a church that kicked people out or kicked you out for a reason that didn't make any sense at all. When they were supposed to care for you, they neglected you. Like, I understand that there's some legitimate church hurt that's happened, not just even in our world, but even in this room. I get that. And I just want to say to you, if you're in the room, I am so sorry that that's been your story. I'm sorry that the church or people who represent the church have failed you in that way. And at the same time, I also need to say this, that there are people who are claiming church hurt who haven't been hurt by a church, they've been hurt by a person who attends a church. That there have been moments where you've been called out on sin and you just didn't like it. And it's easier to say that someone hurt you than it is to take accountability. And so we find ourselves in this tension of how do we know when the church was in the wrong and when it wasn't? How do we know when I was in the wrong and when I wasn't? How do I know when things need to change or when this is actually the way that things should be? How do we set healthy and proper expectations for what the church is and what it should be so that there can be mutual accountability among us? I think that's an important question. And so if you're visiting for the first time here, if you're brand new, or if you're not like a church person, consider this you getting to sit in on a family meeting. This is not going to be a sermon that's openly entertaining. There's not going to be a lot of ha-ha, he-he stories in this message. But what you're going to find in this message is, I believe, from 1 Peter 5, a framework for how we should view the church, the expectations that we should have, and the level of accountability that we should all have with one another within it. And so if you consider yourself a member of this church, a follower of Jesus, then I would encourage you to take notes and lean in, because the right expectations will lead to the right outcomes, and those right outcomes will lead to a healthy church. So 1 Peter chapter 5, starting in verse 1, it says this. To the elders among you, I appeal to you as a fellow elder and as a witness of Christ's sufferings, who will also share in the glory to be revealed. I love the way that Peter starts this section of the letter. He doesn't come in going, hey, I appeal to you as one of the 12. I appeal to you not only as one of the 12, but one of the 3, one of Jesus' closest. I appeal to you as one of the apostles. No, he doesn't do that. He says, I'm coming to you as a fellow leader in the church, as a fellow elder. You lead in your church context. I've led in church context. I'm not coming to you putting my authority on you. I'm coming to you going, hey guys, I get it too. I know the weight and the responsibility of leading, and I want to level with you for a second. Here's some things that you should expect from yourself. Here's some things that you should expect from your leaders. He says to the elders of the church, this is the expectation. Be shepherds of God's flock. Love that. That are under your care. How do you do that? Watching over them. Not because you must, but because you are willing, as God wants you to be. Not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve. Not lording it over those who are entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive a crown of glory that will never fade away. I love this. Peter starts this section of the letter around accountability with the leaders of the church. He goes, hey, if you're a leader in the church, this is what is expected of you. Now, what's interesting about this letter is that this wouldn't be a letter that the elders or the leaders of the church would go off into a dark room and read by themselves and go, okay, I like that, I don't like that, so we're going to do this, we're not going to do this. Everyone in agreement, vote. Everyone say aye. Okay, cool, so we don't actually have to care for people, but no. This was a letter that was written and read in front of all of the church. Everyone heard it. So the expectations of the leaders were not just clear to the leaders, but it was clear to the church as well. There's accountability here. And he said, this is the expectation. If you're a leader in the church, this is what the church should be able to expect from you. That you would care responsibly, that you would guide willingly, that you would serve selflessly, and that you would lead by example. That you would care responsibly, that you would pay attention to the spiritual and the emotional needs of the people that God has entrusted you to. That you wouldn't be so set in your way that you miss the opportunity to meet people where they are. That you would be aware of the spiritual temperature, the things that people are dealing with, and you would show up in their story intentionally in those spaces. One of the things that I love about our team is the flexibility that they have. Every September, we sit down and we actually write out our content for the whole next year. So all of 2026 has already been mapped out for what I'm planning on preaching. But every now and then what will happen is we'll start hearing stories about things that are happening in the church, and we'll go, hey, we need to look at the budget and we need to look at the content because I feel like there's something else that needs to be addressed. There's something that our people are facing and we need to care for them responsibly. This happened earlier this year with our marriage series. We weren't planning to do a marriage series in August. And we did not budget to do a marriage night. But at the beginning of the summer, we kept hearing these stories of marriages that were wrestling, people who were struggling. We just felt like, okay, Lord, like if this is what people are dealing with, we need to care for them responsibly. I sat down with a couple earlier this year, or a couple, like a month ago, maybe less than a month ago, and they were like, hey, like, I don't know how you did that, but that series timed perfectly with the hardest season of our marriage, and I don't know that we would have made it through without it. It's the responsibility of the leaders to care responsibly, to pay attention to what's going on, and to adjust appropriately. It's to God willingly. One of our staff values, we say to our team all the time, it's not that I have to do ministry, it's that I get to. That it's a gift to be trusted by God, to get to shepherd and lead his people. And at the moment that you move to I have to versus I get to, you might be doing the wrong thing. To serve selflessly, that leadership is not about climbing the ladder, it's about becoming one. It's not about making your way to the top. It's about helping people reach places that they cannot reach on their own. You serve selflessly. You lay down your life. What's best for the church is what's best, not necessarily what's best for you. And we lead by example, that we try our best to live a godly life, that the people around us would see and go, hey, I follow them as I follow Jesus. That's what Paul would say. Follow me as I follow Christ. Live a life so worthy as a leader that people go, hey, there's some things in you that I admire that I should follow. A friend of mine asked me this question a few years ago. It was incredibly convicting for me. He said, Gerald, if the prayer life of your church looked like your own personal prayer life, what type of prayer life would your church have? Incredibly convicting. I had to do an evaluation, like, is my prayer life the type of prayer life that I want us to have? If your love for people looked like the church, what type of love would be represented here? If your willingness to serve was the same as the willingness to serve as your entire congregation, what type of service would be a part of our church? Husbands in the room, can I just say this to you, stepping away from church leadership for a second? What your prayer life looks like, what your leadership looks like, what your love looks like, trickles down from you into the framework of your whole family. So where you see problems in your kids, where you see problems with your spouse, where you see problems in the culture of your family, it may be a chance to look in the mirror and go, how am I modeling this for everyone else? Because that's the leaders of the church, is an expectation. You care responsibly. Know what's going on with your people and care for them. Guide willingly. Be glad that you get to be a part of their story. Serve selflessly. Don't make this about you. Make it about how you can serve others and lead by example. Now, there's an incredibly important word, though, that Peter says, and I want to make sure we don't miss it. He says, this is to the elders. Elders. I think if there was one letter in the entirety of the Bible that I would find to be incredibly important for context, this would be the letter right here. Elders, plural. What happens in our Western Christian context is we put a weight on an individual to be all things to all people that they are incapable of being. Please hear me. Your pastor is not God. And I'm not just saying that for me, I'm saying that for anyone who will ever hear this video on the internet for all of eternity. We are humans just like you. Part of the reason we do our stage like this is because I don't want to be standing up elevated going, look up at me. No. We're all in this together trying to figure it out. And so as an individual, there's going to be moments where I don't care responsibly enough, where I miss it, where I don't know what's going on with our people and I completely fall short. There's going to be moments where I'm not as willing as I should be, where I get out of bed and my posture and my attitude is not the way that it should be. There's going to be moments where I'm not as selfless as I hope to be because I am a human being and I fall short. There's going to be areas of my life that you look at and you go, yeah, we should follow Gerald there. And yeah, I don't know. It looks like he's struggling there for sure. But the beauty of the church is that it's not one leader that this thing rests on. It's the elders of the church. It's plural. The leaders of the church together. So Gerald's not coming to every hospital visit, but someone in our church will. Gerald's not going to be able to disciple every leader, but a Bible study leader can. Gerald's not going to be able to make all the financial decisions for the church, but our elder board that meets every quarter will. We all do this together, and so there's a mutual accountability that the leaders of the church need to show up and care for the church appropriately. Are y'all tracking with me? Okay. So we should just end there because it's all on the leaders, right? I love Peter. Verse 5. In the same way, you who are younger, y'all say that with me? Younger. If you're over the age of 40, you're like, that's not for me. It is. Okay, let me clarify. When it says younger, he's not talking about necessarily younger in age. There's three ways that this word could be interpreted. It could be in age, like an older person to a younger person. It could be in faith. This person's been following Jesus longer, so you're younger in the faith. But the idea that's actually being communicated here is less about age, and it's more about submission to leadership. It's more about, hey, there's the leaders, the elders of the church. Doesn't matter how old they are. And then there's the members of the church. There's a congregation. And there's a relationship that's necessary between the two. He says, in the same way, the leaders have accountability, and we need to hold them to that. Also, you who are part of the church have accountability. And he says, this is your accountability. Submit yourself to your elders. Submit yourself to your elders in the same way. So what does that look like? How do you submit in the same way? Well, if the leader is responsible to care responsibly, then it's your responsibility to ask for help. We do this thing in our marriage where we're like, hey, I just want you to know. I just want you to know when I say, hey, where do you want to eat? And you go, I don't really care. And I say, how about Chick-fil-A? And you're like, I don't want Chick-fil-A. You're just supposed to know. That's not what I want. You're just supposed to know when you walk in the door. Oh, you've had a hard day today. I can just tell by looking at your face. I'm just supposed to know that you were expecting to do. No, in our family we have this rule. If you don't say it, it doesn't count. You can't hold me accountable for something that I don't know about. And what Peter is saying is in the same way that there's responsibility and expectations and accountability for the leaders, mirror that. So congregation, if you need help, tell somebody. Don't get mad that nobody showed up for you when you didn't tell anyone that you needed them to show up for you. Don't get mad that you walked through a season alone when you never told anyone that you were feeling lonely. In the same way that they're supposed to care for you responsibly, you ask for help. In the same way that they, God willingly, you accept correction. That you need some people in your life who can just say, hey, this is how I see it, and you're like, maybe they see something I don't see, I should listen. Some people who don't stand on their own authority, but who go, hey, like when I read the scriptures, what I'm hearing from you doesn't really line up with what I'm seeing in the text. And I'm just telling you, this is not like Gerald going, hey, listen to the pastors of the church and just do whatever they say. This is me saying that if you are in any setting where there's someone who is leading you and you are a follower, you ought to actually listen to what they say, myself included. Here's an example. On Tuesday, I will sit in a room with 4 men from our church who are my spiritual advisory team. They have no responsibility over the life of the church. Their responsibility is over my life. And I've chosen them to sit down once a month, and I answer 3 questions, and for 45 minutes, they tell me what to do, and I walk out and say, yes, sir. Hey, Gerald, seems like your marriage is going to get unhealthy. You and Kylie need to start doing a weekly date night. I don't care what it takes. If you don't have the finance, we'll figure it out. Yes, sir. It's on the calendar. Hey, y'all need to go on a couple of vacations together. You're running too hard. Hey, you need to limit the amount of outside speaking. Yes, sir. There needs to be some spaces in your life where people can offer correction, and instead of fighting back and canceling them because you don't like what they heard, you go, oh, I trust you. You see something I can't see. This is practice gratitude. If they're going to serve selflessly, acknowledge the fact that they're serving you. Say thank you every now and then. Send an email that's like, hey, you did a great job. Not just an email that's like, hey, let me tell you all of the parts you got wrong. One of the things one of my bosses used to do for our team is he would send an email and he would label it urgent. And we all thought we were in trouble, and then it would just be an email of all the things we were doing well. Sometimes people just need encouragement. Hear me. We sometimes assume when someone is naturally good at something that they know that they're doing well. And really they're suffering silently with insecurity, wondering if anyone appreciates what they're doing. Unspoken gratitude is ingratitude. Share. And then follow their example. If they're to lead by example, follow their example. Now, that can be hard for us, but that's what Paul says. He says, follow me as I follow Christ. This isn't saying that your leader is God. This is saying that if they're ahead of you or if they've gotten some things figured out, there's some things that you can learn from them. You can follow their example. So there's this mutual accountability. Now Peter doesn't end there, though. He doesn't just go, hey, leaders and church, this is the way that you're supposed to function with each other. And the reason I think he doesn't stop there is because he knows within this framework, it can get really unhealthy because you start to think your leaders are something that they're incapable of being, or the leaders start demanding things from the people that they're incapable of doing. So there needs to be more in this relationship than just the leader in the church. So he gives us another set of expectations. He says this, all of you, The Southern translation of it says it this way: all y'all. It's fall, y'all. Clothe yourself with humility towards one another. Why? Because God opposes the proud, and he shows favor to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under where? God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him. Why? Because he cares for you. Be alert and of sober mind, because your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of suffering. So Peter goes, hey, there's some expectations for the leaders, for sure. There's some expectation for the members of the church, absolutely. He goes, but all of you, don't forget who's the leader of the church actually. Leaders, this isn't your church, it's God's church. Members, this is not your church, it's God's church. So all of us together, remember whose authority we're under. All of you practice humility. All of you get under his hand. All of you cast your anxieties and your cares on him. Why? Because he's the only one who's big enough to carry all of our anxiety. Let's stop leaning on people to be something that only God can be. He goes, for all of you, whatever you're going through, no matter who you are, where you're from, how much money you make, what your leadership role is, all of you have a set of expectations that are due to God. He says this: what God expects from you is that you would humble yourself, that you would get a right-sized view of God, that you would see him rightly and you would put yourself in your proper place, that you would cast your cares on him, that you would give him your anxieties and your worries and let him carry the weight, that you would be alert and of sober mind, be prepared. Because the reality is this is not a battle of flesh and blood, that there is a real spiritual battle taking place and a real spiritual enemy who wants to kill, steal, and destroy your life. So he says, be prepared, be aware, be alert, be ready for the schemes and the attacks of the enemy. He says, stand firm, don't give up. When things get difficult, stay in it, stay in the fight. And he says, consider others. Remember, you're not the only one. The family of believers is dealing with this suffering all around the world. So consider what someone else might be going through. Most of you have heard me say this before, but one of my favorite movies is the movie Wonder, and in it the line, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. You have no idea what someone else is going through until you're willing to put yourself in their shoes to consider what they might be facing. So Peter says, hey, there's some expectations that you should have from your leaders in the church in order for the church to be healthy. There's some expectations that your leaders should have from you in order for the church to be healthy. There's expectations that God has of all of us, but what I love about the way that he closes, he goes, when we get this right, when we as leaders step up and serve the way that we're supposed to, when we as followers of Jesus, members of the church, show up the way that we're supposed to, when all of us together are submitted to God and we live up to the expectations he calls for, he says, this is actually what you can expect from God. You can place some expectation on him as well. He says, this is what you can expect from him. That the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered for a while, he will restore you. He will make you strong. He will make you firm and steadfast. To him be the power forever and ever. Amen. So what can we expect from God? That when we show up as the church that he's intended us to be, that when we live up to the expectations that he has for us, when we'll humble ourselves and cast our cares and be prepared and stand firm, consider others, when we'll ask for help, when we will accept correction, when we'll practice gratitude and follow the example of our leaders, when the leaders care responsibly, when they will give God willingly, when they will serve selflessly, when they lead by example. He goes, when you guys do that, here's what I'll do. I'll restore you. I'll strengthen you. I'll support you. I'll secure you. I'll restore you. I won't just fix the broken pieces. I'll put them back together to make them something completely new. I'll strengthen you when you feel weak and you're tired of fighting the fight, when there's been too much going on in this life. I will give you the sustenance and the strength to get you through. I'll support you. I will hold you steady when life seems unstable. I will walk with you hand in hand. I will secure you. Your purpose, your peace, your eternity, everything that you need will be found secure in me. That when the church, guys, shows up the way that we're supposed to, God shows up in ways that we can't imagine. That when the leaders shepherd the flock, when the church trusts their leaders, when everyone practices humility and dependency, God shows up and restores. And it builds something beautiful. It builds a healthy church. That these expectations, matched with our accountability, lead to a healthy church. And it's not just a healthy church. It's an attractive one. Because when the church lives up to those expectations and people see God start to restore families, when they see God start to strengthen individuals, when they see the support of a community and a security in Christ, they go, I want that. I don't know if I believe what you believe, but I want that. I don't know if I agree with what you're saying, but I want that. I don't know. It feels like a lot. You want me to believe that a man died, rose again, and somehow that saves me? I don't know, man. But what I've seen in y'all seems so good that I at least have to explore. And can I just tell y'all, it's easy for a pastor to say that, but I can say it because I've seen it. Let me give you an example. 2 weeks ago, I spoke at a young adult ministry on a Monday night, spoke on the message on confession. And it was this beautiful time, really moving space for us. And the next day, Rob, who's sitting right here on the front row, invites me to come and speak at his Bible study. He's been leading a group of young men at the Camden Apartments down in Buckhead. And I was planning to speak on something completely different, but honestly, I was kind of tired, and I felt like the Lord was like, hey, that was pretty good, just use that again. I was like, cool, so I'll speak on confession again. And so I pull into the apartment, and I walk through, and I'm immediately hit with the smell of weed, and I'm like, whoa, Rob, what kind of Bible study are you leading, bro? Like, what is going on in here? No wonder this is so spiritual, right? And so we walk into the courtyard, and it's just this, like, there's an outdoor grill, there's a couple of tables, and it's surrounded by apartments. Y'all, this is like the most unideal place to try to do a Bible study. About 30 guys there, and we finish eating, and I jump into this message on confession. And I get to the end, and I said, hey, I felt like the Lord on the way here gave me 3 very specific scenarios. We're going to practice confession. You're going to get in the little groups and just kind of get some things out into the open. And asking a group of 30 guys to do this in an open setting in the middle of an apartment complex feels wild, you know? But it says 3 specific scenarios. For one of you, for someone, scenario 1 is you were exposed to something at a young age. You watched something by a family member that you should have never seen. And it's created patterns in your life that you haven't been able to break. You need to tell someone about that because you've never told anyone. Second category is there's some guys maybe in this circle who you've been working to get your dad's approval, and you tried sport after sport after sport just to get him to notice you, and it didn't work, and now you're doing it with business, and you feel unsatisfied, but you don't know how to deal with it, and you need to tell someone, you need to confess that. The third group is maybe there's somebody here who you had something happen with an ex, and you can't get over it, and it's keeping you from a future relationship. You need to confess that so that you can get free from it and move on. And I said to the guys, hey, like if any of those categories like stand out to you, tell me, tell Rob, tell somebody. Because when you jump out there and you're like, hey, I feel like the Holy Spirit said this, it's kind of nice every now and then to know, like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, I really did hear from God on that, you know? And so over the course of time, I hear some guys respond to number 2. Hear some guys respond to number 3. No one really for number 1 on the list. Then Rob walks into my office this week, and he goes, hey, crazy story. Getting ready for Bible study, cooking for the guys. 2 guys walk up to me, and the guy says, hey, my boyfriend and I were sitting and listening from our balcony last week. We heard the whole thing. That first category, that was his story. He's Buddhist, but now he's interested in learning about your God. When a church gets together and the leader cares and guides and serves and leads and follows the prompting of the Spirit, when the members are willing to be honest, to ask for help, to accept correction, to practice gratitude, and to follow the leader, when everyone practices humility and they cast their cares and they show up prepared knowing that this is a spiritual battle and they stand firm on their convictions and they consider others, God shows up and he restores and strengthens, supports and secures, and people are listening and watching and they see it and they go, I want that. That the Lord would give a word, not for the 30 guys in the circle, but for the dude who's sitting on his balcony who's practicing another religion. Why? Because God knows when there is a healthy church and people show up actually hungry for him and are willing to be accountable to each other, he can trust that church to reach people. I wholeheartedly believe our ability to reach a lost and dying city is directly connected to our ability to be accountable to each other as his church. The healthier we are, the more people we reach. Because God doesn't want us to invite them into a family that's dysfunctional. Broken people don't need a broken home. They need a healthy one. And when we live up to the expectation and the accountability happens, we become that. Now, I wish every story went that way, but it doesn't. Because I don't know if you knew this, but the church is made up of people. And people are imperfect. And imperfect people hurt people. To close, I just kind of want to show you how that happens so maybe we can avoid it. I considered titling this message Avoiding Church Hurt, which we may still do that. But I want to show you some ways that we can avoid hurt and how this hurt tends to happen in the church. This is how we'll close. When we focus too much on what we expect from our leaders and what our leaders expect from us, the relationship becomes all horizontal. It's all about people, and we forget about God in the story. And so what happens in that process is this. Your leader becomes God to you, and when they fail, then you don't trust God anymore. Human failure. When the relationship is all about us, and God's not a part of it, human failure is what's going to hurt you in the church. Or when you focus your attention on what you can expect from your leaders and what you expect from God, then it's all about, hey, God, give me, serve me, leader, give me, serve me, feed me, and you never actually put feet to your faith. And so when challenges come, when struggle comes, when you actually need to have some resiliency or some tools in your tool belt, you don't have any because you have an underdeveloped faith. It's been all about give me and never my participation. Hear me, God is a God of partnership. Does he have power? Absolutely. But his power is made active when we participate with him. You'll have an underdeveloped faith if it's just about what your leaders and what God can give you. If you lean too hard on what you expect from God and what God expects from you, you end up being one of those people who's like, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Like, it's just like me and God, I wake up in the morning and I make my cup of coffee and I read She Reads daily, and I take a picture and put it on Instagram and like, hey, look, I'm spiritual, I love God. So good. Except for I'm lonely and I'm depressed and I have no friends and I have no idea how I'm gonna make it through life. And it's the church's fault because no one really cares about me. Or maybe it's that you focus so much on your vertical relationship that you forgot your horizontal. You remember what Jesus said, the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second is like it, meaning equal to it. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is a vertical and a horizontal. I've been doing a lot of study on this idea of relational disconnection because one of the common things that I hear in our church is like, oh, I haven't found my people yet, or like, it's hard to find community, or I don't really feel plugged in, I don't feel connected, and so I'm gonna try a different church, or I'm gonna go somewhere else, or I'm gonna bounce around and go from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, and eventually I'll find my people. The University of Kansas, so this is like a completely secular study, interesting though, says that it takes 40 to 60 hours to move someone from an acquaintance to a casual friend, 80 to 100 hours to move them from a casual friend to an actual friend. 200 hours to have a deep friendship. And the way a deep friendship is defined is they'll show up for you when things are difficult and you would show up for them. So the relationship that you want from the church takes 200 hours to get. If you attended Bible study every single week, all 32 weeks, you might cover 64 hours in 1 year. What does that tell you? 4 years of investment for you to get the type of relationship you're looking for. And I'll have a conversation with someone and I'll ask, how many times you've been to Bible study? They're like, 4. 8 hours. 8 hours. You want someone who would carry your casket at your funeral in 8 hours? 8 hours. You want someone to show up in your midnight hours after 8 hours? 8 hours. You want someone to love you deeply after 8 hours? No. You actually have to invest some time or you'll get hurt because you'll be relationally disconnected. Or the last way is you focus all of your time on what your leaders can expect from you and what God expects from you, and it leads to total exhaustion because now it's just about pleasing the leader and it's just about pleasing God and it's just doing, and there's no receiving. And you burn out. And you're hurt. So how does hurt happen in the church? Well, when our expectations are off and we don't have accountability, human failure happens, you end up with an underdeveloped faith, you end up relationally disconnected, or you end up totally exhausted and you're hurt by the church. And can I just let you in on a secret? If you attend any church for more than a year or two, one of those is bound to happen. Because the church is made of imperfect people. And imperfect people hurt people. So the question then is, how do we heal? I'm so glad you asked. You hold space for imperfection. Because if you're a sinner and they're a sinner, that means somebody in the process is going to sin. So don't be blindsided by the fact that somebody fails. Hold space for imperfection for your leaders, for yourself, for each other. Be okay with the fact that it's not going to be perfect. If you're looking for a perfect church, can I just tell you where you're going to find it? Heaven. 2, examine your expectations. Is what I was expecting of my leader fair based on what the scriptures say? And if not, I need to do some correction. Am I living up to the expectations that the scriptures have of me? Are we being the people that God has called us to be? And if not, then I need to address the issue. Hear me. It is better to send an email and say, I'm frustrated, than it is to just leave and church hop until you find yourself in the oblivion of searching where there is no community, no relationship, and you're empty. And before you know it, you've just walked away from the very thing that God has called you to be a part of. How about we stop running away from confrontation and we just have healthy conversation and confrontation and love? Had that happen 2 weeks ago. After the death of Charlie Kirk, I had a conversation with a member of our church, sent me an email and was like, hey, I just wish you would have said more. And I responded back and said, hey, here's some things that I did say. Maybe you didn't see them. And she responded and said, hey, that's like really helpful, but here's some other things that I would say. And I responded and said, da-da-da-da, and we went back and forth. And at the beginning of that email exchange, we said, hey, why don't we get together and talk about this in person? My calendar's pretty full, so we'll do that in 3 weeks. So let's kind of have the conversation online, and we can kind of close it out in person. We met this last week. We sat down in the room, and she looked at me and goes, I almost canceled because I really don't need to talk about it. I feel like we found common ground. But I love our church. And I just figured it'd be good to get to know you and figure out how I can get more involved. Friends, that's the way the church is supposed to work. Is you hold space for sometimes people are wrong. Sometimes I'm wrong. People are going to make mistakes. It's never going to work perfectly. You examine your expectations. Hey, is what I'm asking for fair? Am I showing up the way that I'm supposed to show up? And if not, let's address the issue. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's figure it out. And then we let it go. You know what it means to let it go? It means to forgive. And I can just tell you, you will never find a healthy church where forgiveness is not available. Because the scripture requires us to forgive one another in the same way that God has forgiven us. You see, the reason this is the path for healing is because this is the path for healing that Jesus offered us. That he held space for our imperfection, knowing that we all sin and fall short of his glory. Knowing the expectations that he had for us and recognizing that we could not meet them, he decides to address the issue, to leave heaven and come down to the planet Earth, live the perfect life you and I could not live, die the death that we deserve, and raise 3 days later and say, anyone who would believe in me, not anyone who would perform perfectly, not anyone who would meet my expectation, but anyone who would believe, your sins are forgiven, I've let it go. And a healthy relationship with God is available to you. How do we heal from hurt? How do we avoid it altogether? We hold space for imperfection. We examine our expectations. We address the issue head on. And then we decide to let it go. This is the good news of the gospel. And this is what a healthy church looks like. So how do we respond to and navigate pain? Well, we remember our identity is rooted in Jesus. We live in community that we represent and we rely on. We live with integrity no matter what comes our way. We practice resiliency and we stand firm in the fire. And we hold each other accountable to be who God has called us to be. And when we do, not only is the church healthy, but it's also attractive and a watching world, because I want in on that.
You're listening to audio from Home Church Roswell, located in Roswell, Georgia. For more information about this ministry or to give to this ministry, please visit homechurchroswell.com.